It's 1 minute past 1 o'clock, so I think I will crack on. Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Power of a Well School. My name is Chris Caws. I am the Youth Sport Trust Development Manager. Okay. Just letting somebody else in. Okay, so like everybody else, this is the first time that I've ever delivered or been involved in a virtual conference, let alone deliver. So hopefully it's going to go okay, and your interactions throughout the whole session will be very much appreciated, which would be great. So thank you. Couple of other things. If you can turn your video on, I've already said that'd be great. If you can keep your sound off, that'd be wonderful. Please, during the session, stay hydrated as much as you can. If you want to stand up, please stand up, etc. There's going to be a couple of opportunities to be active in the session towards the beginning of the session, but you don't have to do it if you don't want to. There will be opportunities throughout the session to ask questions. I'm actually going to stop the presentation and ask for any questions, but also, and if that's the case, please put up your virtual hand and I will come to you, and please remember to take your mute off. But we're also going to use the chat function as well. So please use that whenever I ask you to. Obviously you don't have to, but it'd be great. It's a means of sharing practice. I'm also going to ask quite a few reflective questions, and again, and give you time to do that and think about your own practice. But again, if you would like to put some of that within the chat function, then please do, because in a normal circumstance, if this was being delivered at Callowith College, where the conference has been hosted the last couple of years, you know, you will be doing and talking about some of this, some of these examples and some of these questions together and sharing good practice. And that sometimes, in a lot of cases, is the best part of a conference, is taking away those golden nuggets of practice. So please use the chat function as much as you can, and I will endeavour as much as possible to have a look at some of what you are talking about within there and reflect on that. So if you don't know, Youth Sport Trust, we're a national children's charity working to ensure that every child enjoys the life-changing benefits that come from play and sport. We've been around for 25 years, pioneering new ways of using sport to improve the well-being of children and giving them a brighter future. Just to let you know that what I've done with this presentation, this Power of a Well School presentation, is there are actually 3 pre-recorded webinars that you can access, either as a part of a membership package or you can just buy them off the shelf. So it's a very condensed version of that, but I've also brought in some other elements from other presentations, such as a little bit around the power of an active school and some other bits as well. So hopefully over this next 55 minutes or so, here's the outcome. So I'm going to initially set the scene, give a bit of context, give a bit of evidence and insights and data, backing up really what Jane was saying this morning from Sport England. They're going to talk about, well, what is a well school and what do we think a well school is? It might mean different things to different people. And we've got over 20 people on the call, and you might have all different versions of what that means. I'm also going to give you a brief introduction to the Well Schools interactive platform, which you may not know about, and also you may or may not be a part of already. I'm then going to focus on physical activity, social and emotional well-being outcomes that are derived from PE in school sport and physical activity, and when schools put that at the heart of what they're doing, as well as sharing and showcasing examples of good practice. Hopefully we'll get to that. This is the first time I've delivered in this way, so I'm hoping that I'll have enough time to do all of that. And throughout the whole presentation, I'm going to thread through links to governors and how you could work with your governors in terms of your link governor in particular around ensuring that PE, school sport, physical activity is high on the agenda within school, and that it has that impact on well-being and also on the whole school outcomes. And linked into that, I guess the first question around, your governors is, have you got a good relationship with your link governor at the moment? And what's that like? And has he or she got a really good understanding of what you are doing or what you are trying to do? I guess in summary, before moving on, is that a well school is something that it doesn't happen overnight. You'll fully appreciate that. It is something that could be a part of a long-term strategy. And this 1 hour workshop is not going to develop, solve, or create possibly a well school, but I'm hoping that I'm going to be asking and posing some challenging questions that are going to make you think possibly, and maybe look towards, well, okay, we can improve our school and a well school even more than what it currently is at the moment. So this is just a bit of an active part of the session. So this actually comes from, I'm going to share an example from our Power of an Active School, CPD. I briefly answered a question this morning as part of the Q&A panel around the Power of an Active School, CPD. And this is on our Break to Learn continuum, which are ways of organising, describing increased physical activity throughout the school day and providing real movement to meaning to movement. So this is linked to routine. So you have break, routine, and learn. And routine is, obviously regular ways of working that reduce sedentary behaviour, but not to the detriment of learning. So you might, at the moment, currently, in any of your lessons, ask children to put their hand up if there's a multiple choice question. But what I'd like you to do, and you don't have to do this, and I can't see whether you are or aren't with those that haven't got their cameras on, is if you wouldn't mind standing up now, please. And what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to give you a couple of questions, and I'd just like you to answer based on those shapes that you can see in front of you. I'm going to give you a couple of questions, a little bit of fun, but actually it's about, you can absolutely replicate this in your any lessons to get the children out of their chairs and standing in a lesson. So the first question is, what percentage of 15 to 16-year-olds suffer exam stress? Is it A, B, C, or D? So if you would kindly make your shape now. Okay, that's great. It is actually A. So well done, it's 92%. So if you were doing A, congratulations. And question 2 is, what percentage of children are doing fewer than 30 minutes a day? This is pre-lockdown, so pre-COVID. So is it A, B, C, or D? Okay, the answer is B, 29% of children doing less than 30 minutes a day. Okay, so thanks ever so much for that. But again, that's just an example that you could possibly take back to school if you're not already utilising or using ideas like that. So that's, as I said, that sits in our Break to Learn continuum. Okay, just a bit of an introductory activity. So could you please, I'm going to put the timer on for this. I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to a minute to do this. Could you, using your camera on your phone, obviously, just click on that QR code, and what that'll do is that'll take you to a website, and you'll see that there's a continuum of well-being. So well-being continuum from, a large majority of your students have good well-being to the other end of the spectrum, a lot of students who are showing poor signs of well-being. So if you wouldn't mind just doing that quickly now for me. It's all completely anonymous, and actually the data that you're going to put in will really help us with our wider well school information research. So I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to do that, please, if that's okay. Hopefully it's working all right. Okay. So, okay, we've got a few Few issues not working. Sorry. Okay.
And you by myself.
We tried that one. Okay, the link isn't working. Okay, I do apologize about that. Anyway, if you can imagine on a scale of then 0 or 1 to 10, 10 being you've got good well-being, and 0 being low well-being. Just in your head, think about where that sits on that continuum in terms of well-being of your children and young people in your school. And I guess the rhetorical question to really reflect on is, why did you put that answer? Why is that? What's some of the issues and challenges around well-being in your school? Just reflect on that. Okay. You may well have seen these statistics before, but and they're not particularly very positive. And this is actually pre-lockdown data that we've got from a whole number of different sources and research that's been carried out around physical, social, emotional well-being of children and young people. I'm sure you've seen some before. And just to add to those, pre-lockdown as well, as 90% of school leaders have reported increase in the number of students experiencing anxiety or stress over the last 5 years. And children in England are ranked 14th out of 15 countries for overall happiness with life in Children's World study in 2014. So that doesn't bode well. So that's pre-lockdown data. And you may or may not be aware that we did some research taking from a number of different sources during lockdown, and this is the report that we've written. It's about an eight-page evidence paper. The link is on the top there. It's on our website, and there's 7 areas that you can see there's what covered in the themes, and some of the stats that come out of this as well. And remember, this was during lockdown. Is that 41% of children were saying they were lonelier than before restrictions were put in place. And 83% of children with existing mental health conditions believe they worsened during lockdown. So again, not great stats at all, linked into the impact that it's having on children and young people. And in some cases for girls, the gap was even bigger for girls. So this is accessible on our website, and it's useful to know and be aware of. And just backing up on what Jane was talking about this morning, so she mentioned the Sport England data. So they surveyed just over 1,100 children aged between 7 and 16 on their variety of activity levels during lockdown. And you can see the stats on there. I'm not going to repeat those. And obviously it's less the amount of 60 minutes of physical activity that children were doing in lockdown in general, quite radically. However, and Jane alluded to this as well this morning, there were some positives that came to that data as well. And one of them was that PE, sport and exercise are now seen by young people as more important to their lives than pre-lockdown. And 37% agreed with that, as against 12% who see them as less important. 71% of children have been more active with their family in recent months, and you may well be a part of that as well. And 60% of girls say they are more active compared to 11% of boys. So some statistics there that are negative, but then also some real positive ones. I guess I've got a reflective question here again for you, something to think about and just ponder. And have you collected any data during this time to evidence physical activity levels or other issues with wider well-being? And I guess the question I've got is, if yes, how have you used that? And please, for a minute or so, please put anything into the chat function that you'd like to share. And how have children benefited from that? If you haven't, is it something that you think would be worthwhile doing? And maybe help form some sort of baseline data for you with regards to seeing, well, where are your children at with physical activity and well-being. And you could potentially use this information to then influence your senior leadership team, if that's something that you think should be high up on your agenda, because it's not seen as being as particularly as important at the moment due to all the other priorities within your school. So again, just reflect on that. How could you use this data, and have you got your own data that you could use? And then again, linked into what Jane was talking about with the active lives. Have you done the active lives data? And again, if you have got your own reports and each school gets a report, how have you used that data? What have you done with it again? How have you used that data in terms of improving your PESPA offer, your PE school sport physical activity offer for your children in your school? So how have you done that? If you'd like to put something in the chat function, you're more than welcome to, but otherwise just spend a bit of time reflecting on that. Okay, this next slide just indicates we wanted to build up a picture of the current landscape. So this is a survey that we did with PE and school leaders around about September time. So when schools were, after 6 months of closures, schools coming back, and we want to understand that current provision of timetabled curriculum, physical education, and the extracurriculum offer. And we found that around about a fifth of secondary schools and a sixth of primary schools of those that we surveyed were offering less PE time than before the pandemic. Over 50% were not offering any extracurricular activity during the autumn term, or a lot less than what was happening before. And this was partly down to a whole number of reasons, due to obviously the unsureness of how to deliver physical education and all the other areas COVID safe, but then also how guidance has been interpreted. And obviously we spent quite a bit of time this morning on the keynotes talking about that guidance, and Sue was referring to it from AFPI. And the other impact from this data that and this survey that really lays bare was that 3/4 of the teachers were talking about, and as it says on here, that those low physical fitness levels of the children when they were coming back, and particularly just short bursts of activity, that the children were very much out of activity. So again, just a quick reflective question: does this data or do these stats paint a similar picture in your own school? Did you see children coming back with low physical fitness? Did you see them coming back with mental health issues, including anxiety? And are you using PE in school sport and physical activity to address some of these, particularly focusing on maybe well-being and delivering well-being outcomes in your physical education lessons? That's going to have a real impact on that. Have a bit of time to reflect. If you want to put something in the chat function, you're more than welcome to. Okay, but there is opportunity, I guess, and this is a YouGov poll that we did way back in February with parents, asking them what are the things that you look for when you choose a school. And this is a prime for your children, and this is from a primary school perspective. And you can see here that well-being, pupil well-being in the school is the second highest. So that's what they're looking for. So which is really great. And also from a secondary school point of view, it is the highest. It is the highest reason why parents look for a secondary school for their students to go to, or for their children to go to. And this survey was done pre-lockdown, so goodness knows what it's going to look like now. If we ask them to go and do that survey again, it may be even higher. So again, another reflective question, I guess another reflective question is around, do you market, advocate, position well-being with parents? So when you've got prospective parents' evenings coming up or brochures, do you really sell well-being as an important part of the children and the students in your school, in the school? Do you really advocate that? Because if parents are saying that's what they're looking for, then here's a really great opportunity to possibly look at introducing that even more into promoting your school, depending upon absolutely what you're doing around well-being. And there is lots of evidence out there, and this is a good example, that children with greater well-being have lower levels of mental health, do achieve better, not only in terms of their academic performance, but they got better attendance, better behaviour, and they drop out less. And please, if you can, that's where the source is there, what works in promoting social and emotional well-being. That's a paper out there that you can access, and again use as part of evidence should you wish to do that for advocating and influencing peace. And we also know that PE sport and physical activity, because there's rafts of evidence and research, can have a positive impact on well-being. There's no evidence from any research to suggest that being active in any lesson whatsoever has a negative effect on behaviour, progress, attainment, achievement. There's no research to suggest that whatsoever. It's possibly about behaviour change of staff and getting them on board with that physical activity agenda. But the reason I've got that Caws image up, and if those of you know the film back in the 1970s, if your PE school sport and physical activity offer is not very good, and particularly PE is taught poorly, then it does have a negative effect on young people and young people's well-being as well. And if anybody's seen that film, it doesn't shine physical education in a particularly good light. And the final one on just some stats before we move on. This has come from data from a recent Sport England survey report linked to secondary teacher training programme, which some of the colleagues on the call have been involved in from secondary schools. I think it's in its 4th year now. And this has involved 62,000 children and young people and 4,500 teachers. I think you'll agree by looking at the stats on there that it really does clearly show that PE in school sport, physical activity, if you get the offer right, can have a really good impact on the physical, social and emotional well-being of children and young people. And I guess reflecting just on governors and that whole work that I've just showed you around evidence and data, both negative but also positive, how are you using this data and evidence and this evidence and possibly your own evidence as well that you might have collected in terms of with your link governor? Do you use any data at the moment with your link governor, and so that they have a really good understanding of your current position of PE in school sport and physical activity in your school? Well, I'm going to pause for a minute. I've given quite a bit of time for some reflective questions, but not time to ask any questions. Does anybody got any questions that they would like to ask at this point about anything that I've mentioned? If you have, if you'd like to put your hand up, the virtual hand. If not, then I will crack on. Okay, hopefully that's been, to set the scene, that's been quite useful. So moving on. And please, I'd like you to use the chat function here now. And what I'd like you to do, I'm going to give you a minute to do this, just from a time point of view, and I'm going to put you on timer. In the chat function, please could you answer those first 3 questions? You might not get through all 3 in a minute, I appreciate that. But it'd be really good if you could just start putting there. How was students' well-being affected by COVID-19 with the extended period away from school? So when they came back into school, what was their what did you notice about that well-being? And which aspects of well-being were most affected? And did you see any positives? Did you see any positives from that? So if I could ask you then, please, based on those first 3 questions, and again, as I said, you're not going to get through all 3 in a minute. Would you mind just populating the chat function, please? And I'm going to give you a minute starting from now. Thank you very much. Thank you, Lisa. Okay, that's great. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. A lot of social. Less activity. Positive was pride. Some students had in telling me about that activity, completing PE challenges. That's great. Thank you. Thanks, Matt, for sharing that. They love coming back to school. That's great to hear, Dan. Concentration levels, they weren't able to maintain. Great. Again, that time with the family. Thank you, Lauren. That. See that, Gary. Thank you. So a whole mix there of impact. Please keep carrying on filling that the chat box in. Thank you very much indeed. And you know, there might be some good examples there that some of you would like to take away from that. I'd like you now just to focus on that last question. And that last question again, if you wouldn't mind just populating the chat box. And again, I'm going to give you probably about 30 seconds to a minute. What does well-being mean to you? What does well-being mean to you? It's as simple as that. Thank you. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Olivia. Work-life balance. Happy, confident children. Great. Great. A lot of synergy here, lots of similar words coming up, which is great to see. Thank you very much indeed. We'll stop there. Please just keep adding them on, though. Please add them on. I'm going to move on. So thank you very much indeed. So from our point of view, this is what we think at YST wellbeing. We're referring to the whole person, much indicated by what you're putting in the chat function, which is absolutely great. But we do know as well that poor well-being has a negative impact on young people and subsequently all those things linked into whole school outcomes. But when you look at physical, social, emotional, spiritual and intellectual well-being from a whole person perspective, how can PE sport physical activity support this? And my question to you now, just again, a reflective question, and please put something in the chat function. I guess the reflective question is, does your PE school sport and physical activity offer really help meet those wider well-being needs of students? And how do you know? And if we were face to face, I would be asking you to having those discussions on your tables. Unfortunately, we haven't got that opportunity to do that. So that's why maybe you want to use the chat function. But does your offer really help meet those wider well-being needs? And how do you know that? How do you know that? And again, thinking about governors, do you discuss your PE and school sport and physical activity offer with your governors, with your link governor? You know, from primary schools perspective as well, how many are you using your primary school premium funding? And Sue alluded to this, and Jane did as well this morning, about the impact on well-being and using maybe your underspend in particular around up till the end of March, around issues and challenges you've got around well-being that can be addressed through the physical and through PE school sport and physical activity. And does your governor ask questions around how you spend the PE school premium funding and the impact it's having on health and well-being as well? So it hopefully gives you a chance just to reflect on that. You know, you're all coming up with fantastic answers, which is great, but does your offer help meet those wider well-being needs of your children and young people? And how do you know? And maybe it's about finding out maybe more about that, you know, but you haven't necessarily got the evidence at the moment. So when we look at the Ofsted framework, what opportunities does the Ofsted framework present around well-being? So when we talk about that, and again, I've just put three headings there around leadership and management. So when we talk about leadership and management, we're talking about strong shared values. Here we're talking about staff well-being as well, which is extremely important, and how that workload and pressure is being managed. When we talk about personal development, we talk about learners' broader development, their character development, things such as resilience, confidence, independence, and how do they keep physically and mentally healthy. And then when we look at overall effectiveness, we're looking at experiences here as well as outcomes, but how do your values, your policies and your practices, so that real bigger picture, broader stuff, impact on student well-being? And what is it like to be a learner in your school? You know, what is it like for them? And do they know that well-being is really important on their agenda, and it's something they can discuss? And linked to everything I've mentioned, where is well-being referred to in your whole school development plan, in your school evaluation summary? Does it link into these areas of Ofsted? Not OSHA driven by Ofsted in any way, shape or form. And is well-being a part of your values and your vision of your school, and therefore within your culture as well? So this is thinking a lot more broadly now, and thinking a bit more bigger picture around where well-being can fit into those wider whole school outcomes. And I guess just going back to that slide there around the Ofsted, again, that governor link, okay? Do you have discussions with your governor around how your offer, your PE, in particular your school sport, your physical activity, how that links into the Ofsted framework, particularly around leadership and management? It may be around behaviour and attitudes, but particularly around that personal development agenda, and the SMSC piece of work, the health and well-being obviously piece of work. But how does your offer, okay, link into that, and how do you discuss that? And do you discuss that with your link governor? So for everybody here on this call, we could all come up with different descriptions of what a well school is and what it would look like and what it would sound like and feel like to learn, but also to work in as well, and have that really great environment, knowing that you are being looked after as well, and your well-being is very important part of the school culture. But how would you describe it? How would you describe a well school to another person? And you might well start off initially, first of all, with that, building a picture around the values and the vision and the broader practice, rather than maybe starting off with specific areas within the curriculum. So how would you describe a well school? As I said, everybody will say possibly different things. The DFE description of a well school includes a safe and calm environment, improving the mental health and well-being of the whole school population, equipping pupils to be resilient so they can manage the normal stress of life effectively, teaching pupils about mental well-being through the curriculum, and reinforcing this teaching through school activities and ethos. So resilience is mentioned there. So that's the DFE description of a well school. You may agree with that. You may think that's a really good description. Everybody will have different terminologies of that. Is there anything from your point of view missing from that? That might be a really good base and starting point for you. but would you describe it in a different way? I guess my reflective question here, and again, maybe something you want to put in the chat function, but I'll leave it up to you, is do you, and I've left resilience on there because resilience was particularly mentioned in that description of a world school. Do you explicitly and overtly teach resilience in and through PE, school sport and physical activity? So do you actually really explicitly teach and inform young people around resilience? I'm going to give you 30 seconds to just populate the chat function, if that's okay. Just a bit of a reflection piece, just any ideas of what people are doing around resilience. Thank you. Thanks, Sarah. That's great. Thanks, Joe. That's great to see. That's great, Matt. Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. That's great to see, particularly Joe, is developed through the activity. It's not the activity driving what you're doing, it's actually the outcome or the theme in your case. Great. Thank you, Simon. Thanks ever so much for sharing. And look, you know, just to let you know, coming in, please. Absolutely fantastic. Just to let you know that what you see in front of you is actually comes from one of our personal development posters. We've got 12 A2 size posters. I know some schools on the call will have these. They're really useful to display around the school, to reaffirm, in this case, what resilience is. But as I said, there's 12. And you can see here on the top left-hand side, it gives a description around what resilience is. And when I'm resilient, I am showing these types of traits and skills. It also links into where it mentions good health and well-being, links into that personal development agenda within the Ofsted framework. And then on the bottom left-hand side there, you can see when you are resilient, and gives you different ideas in different scenarios. So in PE, in school and in life. And all 12 posters follow similar themes, obviously on different titles though. So, and you can obviously just purchase those. If you're a member school, you will get these as part of your package, but they can just be bought off the shelf. So some good examples there. I want you to just now show you our if you like, curriculum blueprint. Some people on the call would have seen this already, but it's just worth reiterating. And this is our way of, this is our intent, if you like. If you look at the 3 Ys, this is our purpose of physical education. And it's about, we've interpreted the requirements of the national curriculum, but also the aims of PE. And you can see here it's about that balance of physical outcomes and personal outcomes, as well as the delivery of healthy lifestyle behaviours. And it's a journey from early years all the way through to key stage 4. On the far right hand side, you can see again the progressive outcomes through those different key stages. But it's important to realise that this is a stage, not age approach, and it's not a one size fits all. An example of that may well be that within key stage 2, you may have a group of, dare I say it, boys that are displaying some maybe poor behaviours. So how through physical education could you help develop, possibly might be linked to resilience? How could you therefore improve that through maybe focusing more on the personal outcomes, more on the healthy me element of those personal outcomes through the physical activity and through the actual activity that you're going to be delivering through that. So I guess, you know, is this reflective a question? Does this reflect on how you're delivering your curriculum at the moment? and in terms of having those wider impacts on well-being of young people, but specifically through physical education in this case. Do you share that with your governor? Is your governor aware of your intent, of your purpose of physical education in particular? And how are you linking possibly this to your personal development agenda linked into Ofsted? Thanks, Dan, for sharing on here. We've developed the PD posters for Key Stage 3 PE and personalised them for what we think our students at Penry need to focus on. Fantastic. So each half term we cover resilience, respect, cooperation. That's great to know. And then that's linked into PSHE as well. So that's great. Thank you for sharing that Dan. Here's just a couple of examples of some of the resources and approaches that we use. This is my personal best. This is the primary version. And you can see here again, I've got that theme of resilience. This is a primary version, which is a learner card. And it's about, there's 24 skills that are taught through Health Me, Thinking Me, Social Me, and obviously delivered through the Physical Me. 8 me's in each one. You can see on the left-hand card there, as well as the right-hand card. You can see in the tree those 8 skills. But again, you can see that from this example, that it gives examples of what resilience is, what it looks like, how's it displayed in PE, how's it potentially displayed in school, but then also in life as well. And we've got some really great examples, particularly in Cornwall. There's one infant school that have used some of the 24 skills. In fact, they've taken about 8 of the skills across the 3 me's, and they now form the basis of their school values. And I know in some of the chat, it talks about some of these words that are the school values, which is great to see. And they've embedded it across the whole school. So from adopting this My Personal Best approach, they've now deliver one of these skills, but across every single lesson, and it's having a really great impact. And they then celebrate it and they reward the students if they are displaying resilience in maths lessons, if they are displaying resilience in their physical education lessons, as in any other lesson as well. And this is the secondary version. And this is, again, I focused again on resilience. These are the learner cards. They're being rewritten. They'll be ready for January 21. So this is a This Is Me card. We've also got a Thinking Me, and we've also got a Social Me elements as well to that, both teacher and learning cards. And there's also a version for special schools as well. Now, I hope you don't mind me letting you know about these resources, but this is our opportunity, I guess, to let you guys know that this is what is out there to help deliver explicitly and overtly these life skills and these character development skills that absolutely help support those young people's wider well-being and potentially have an impact on a well school. Final one on this, and this is free to download. So what I mentioned earlier on the Q&A session, and I put it into the chat box. This is part of our coronavirus support. This is our Active in Mind poster, and this is, as I say, free to download. You can download it. It's normally an A2 poster. It links into our Active in Mind project. I know there's a couple of schools that have been involved in this in Cornwall, and it's about helping students to think about a balanced approach to their lifestyle. It's about getting them to take ownership of the decisions they're making around their well-being and putting it at the heart of everything they do. And you can quickly see that there's hydration on there, there's sleep, as well as neuroplasticity. It's not just about exercise, it's really looking at that holistic approach to children and young people's well-being. So you may wish to download that and have a look at that. Before I move on, is there any questions on anything that I've spoken about so far? I'm conscious we've got about 15 minutes left. If anybody's got any questions, don't be shy. Okay, I'm going to move on. So I mentioned as part of the start that I was going to mention the Well School platform. So from our point of view, what is a well school? So this is about, and it was launched in September. Okay, and I know some of the schools on this call are already a part of that movement. So that's what it really is. Well Schools is about a movement of schools committed to the well-being of staff and their students and putting at the heart of everything they do, their teaching, their learning, and their outcome. And then it's essential to young people's lives. So it really does place well-being, just as important as academic performance. And it's having that understanding that effective learners, when they're happy and they're well, and they take care of staff and their pupils' well-being, they create that culture that really does bring the best out of both staff and young people, and it helps them reach their full potential. As it says on the screen there, it's powered by us and also by Bupa Foundation, who've been fantastic in that support. You can be a part of that Well Schools community. The website is on a slide, but it's just basically wellschools.org. And you can sign up and you can pledge now. And I guess linking in with the governors here, is this something that potentially you would talk about with your governor and think about, actually, this would be really important, not just from a physical education department or a primary PE coordinator perspective, but also from a whole school? And could it be led through what you are doing in physical education, but linked into wider school? So the model looks like this. If you're looking at what a well school model is, it comes in 3 pillars. The first one is well led, and that's about staff and head teacher well-being. Is actively supported and championed, ensuring the whole school is well led and connected with the whole school community. And then you've got well prepared. So that middle pillar is about every child has a foundation of physical and emotional literacy that will prepare them to be effective learners and cope with the pressures of life. And then we've got well equipped. So every child is equipped with those skills that we've already mentioned, those wider human skills, through curriculum and an enrichment program that develops their social capital and helps them thrive in the modern world. And then it's that bit about, well, okay, how do you then become a part of a well school, and what does that really mean? So there's 3 elements of it. To commit, it's free to access. It's free to access for any school. So all you have to do is sign up on the website and you commit to a pledge. Okay, it is about then sharing and collaborating via that digital platform to be able to connect and signpost. There are already some fantastic things that are being shared around different categories, such as developing emotional literacy, well-being measures, staff well-being. There's a great example for St Ives School on there that have shared their staff well-being cards, and that's already been picked up by a number of schools across the country, not just in Cornwall. It's about whole school physical activity and developing life skills and experiences. So there's lots of different areas of which to share different examples. You find on there that there's a really good example of how they're dealing with student well-being measures, for instance, that might be up in Northumberland. So therefore, through this platform allows you then connect and then share good practice. And then it's about celebrating. It's about celebrating and measuring that, the well-being impact that's then going to create that culture and climate in your schools, but also celebrating how much well-being has had an impact on young people's achievement as well. I'm going to pause a minute for there. Any questions on any of that? I know some schools have signed up. I appreciate that already, so thank you for doing that. And it's really about then utilising that, and it's a platform to, as I say, share some really good practice. Rob, can I ask you if you can put yourself on silent, please, if that's okay. Thanks, Rob. Okay, moving on. I'm going to swiftly go through these slides now because we're coming to the end of the towards the end of the presentation, 10 minutes, and I want to crack through. So just to let you know, this is our what we call our theory of change, and this is really about a vicarious cycle. but it nicely summarises our position, our 25 years of research and findings that really support the positive benefits of increased physical activity to children's learning and child development. So by increasing that daily physical activity, reducing the decision on, does improve physical, social, emotional well-being, that then does improve behaviour and cognition and lead to increased progress and achievement. And we really would like everybody to feel and believe in this. And I guess the guys on the call is good. I guess with this slide, it's just reiterating that when we talk about light activity, and if we talk about activity, physical activity happening in a classroom environment, even if it's getting out the chairs and sprinting on the spot for 6 seconds, starting off doing a bolt and then doing mow, finishing with a mow, just doing 6 seconds to 10 seconds of activity is absolutely going to have health and cognitive benefits. So it's not about in a lesson taking the children outside and running around, etc. It's really about just integrating light activity that's going to have real benefits on health and cognition, as against the other end of the spectrum with vigorous activity, which is the type of things you're going to see in physical education, school sport, that's going to increase and going to have exercise physiology benefits as against alongside health physiology benefits. And just thinking about going back to what a well school is, one of the first things that you might want to address linked into that is looking at creating a physical activity culture. Some of you will undoubtedly already have this within your school that absolutely will add impact then into that well school agenda. And if you look at the model on or the key questions, if you like, on the left-hand side, that's asking you, what's your own practice like as a teacher? What's your own relationship like with physical activity, and do you really role model that? The next element looks at, well, okay, what about policy and practice? Is physical activity, is it important, and is it mentioned in wider policy and practice within not only your own department but across the school as well? And what about other colleagues? You know, you'll have other colleagues in your school that are really keen on physical activity. So is it about getting them on board initially with this whole physical activity culture, and then getting them to help you influence those that might not necessarily feel at the moment that physical activity is as important as where you see it is, and getting it on their agenda and maybe changing their understanding and behaviours. And then finally, physical activity and the whole PESPA is not about sitting in isolation. It's about how does it sit in with other whole school priorities? Does it sit into whole school strategies? And when this happens, and schools where this does happen, it really is embedded. And it really does form the heart of what a school is all about. And the right-hand side there, you've got a document that's been produced by Public Health England, what works in schools and colleges to increase physical activity. And it looks at 8 principles. It looks at 8 principles around a whole school approach to ensuring that physical activity is embedded across the whole school, and really thinking about how you can make that shift to a physical activity culture. And there's lots of different ideas there, and I'm not going to dwell too long on those. And it may well be one of the first things you might want to do as a result of today is have a look at that. And here's a bit of a framework, if you like, for review around creative and active school, which will link nicely into potential well school. So you've got some key questions there on the left-hand side. And where are you at with those in terms of emerging, establishing, embedded? What are the next steps, and where does it sit on that priority? Just going to run through a few examples now. So this is some examples of what schools are currently doing. So here's a great example of a themed approach throughout the whole week. I'm sure some of you are already doing some of these. Really nicely themed. And this is happening in physical education. This is happening at other times during the school day. So, you know, reflective question to you is are you currently delivering a similar program? And if so, what's the impact of it, and how do you know? But also, what are the barriers? What are the barriers to that? And could you do something like this that's going to help that well school agenda? Here's an example of how a school have really took my personal best at a primary level and really looked at how they've embedded it across the whole school and across the whole curriculum. And there's some examples of their keys to success, and that it is taught explicitly and that it's planned in their delivery. So going back to that resilience example I mentioned earlier, how can you explicitly deliver resilience? So when the children understand if it's delivered through physical education, they can take that skill and then interpret it for when they come up against a challenge within their maths lesson and show the same strategies that they showed in PE in dealing with resilience. Here's an example from a secondary school, a girls' school, looking at their recovery curriculum and adapting that to meet the needs post-COVID. And they really took that healthy me in PE. So we looked at the physical, the social, the creative, the leading. They were the strands that they looked at. And they particularly looked at this at Key Stage 4 and specifically thinking, can we ensure what we've seen from have come back, what do we really need to focus on that is meeting their needs? And well-being sat very much high on their agenda. And this is finally just a quick example from Caroline Chisholm School, again, another secondary school. And they really looked at, what was the impact of physical well-being on the children when they returned, and the obvious was, as we've heard all throughout today, decrease in general fitness levels, regress in previous learnt skills. So, and that impact on emotional well-being, everything we've already mentioned, lack of social interaction, decreased confidence, feelings of lack of self-belonging, loss of learning time, anxiety, etc., etc. So the way they responded is the PE department was, there was a real focus on that physical and emotional well-being. And it was offering support all the time and being available all the time, but ensuring during the lessons there was high activity levels, there was fun, it was enjoyable, providing an opportunity for them to engage with each other, the tutors again, and to develop their communication skills even more, that social interaction, but also offering reassurance, not just within PE, but outside of PE and across the wider school. So last couple of slides now. So just in terms of next steps, what actions are you going to take away from today? You may already be doing all of these things, and I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that a well school is all the things that I've suggested. It is, but there'll be other things as well. What are you going to take away from today, and probably more importantly, the why and the how. So why are you going to potentially look even more at well-being and what a well school for you would look like? I'm going to send the presentation, which will be shared with everybody, so you'll be able to see this. But I'm also going to do a little bit of post-conference reflection. You obviously don't have to do any of this, but I'm just going to set a few questions for you to think about from post this workshop, just to basically see whether that might help in terms of your thinking. I'm going to stop there. Any questions? Any questions at all? No hands up? That's either that I've completely bored you or I've covered a lot of things. If there are, then please, if you have any questions and you don't want to ask them now, please, my contact details will be shared. It's on one of these slides a little bit later on. So please contact me if you have any questions or anything that I've spoken about. Just one thing in terms of with any further support, we do have a governor's toolkit for PE and school sports that is a part of the membership offer, but also it can be, again, as I said earlier, bought off the shelf. You might want to share some of these questions that I put up here in terms of with your governors to look at potentially how they can further support you around particularly the 3 I's, which will absolutely link into the well-being of your students. There's also lots of other resources, CPD, that we've got, some of which I've alluded to, that may help that as well. Finally, I guess it's an opportunity for you to say what this was like, just a bit of evaluation. Really appreciate it. Obviously, I said earlier, this is the first time I've ever delivered this virtually. There were no questions. Thanks ever so much for putting all the good practice and sharing in the chat. That was absolutely fantastic. Thanks for doing that. But if you could either click on the QR code, not sure whether it will work, or alternatively, when I send the presentation out, if you click on that link and just use that tutor code, that would be much appreciated. Thank you very much indeed, everybody. There's my contact details. Enjoy the rest of the conference. Thanks very much indeed, and have a great weekend.
Thank you, Chris. Good to see you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.